mist hampered would-be rescuers throughout the night. When it lifted with the dawn, even those who'd been on the scene through the hours of darkness were shocked by the carnage. Both aircraft had been ripped into pieces. Few and far between of the many thousands of these pieces were those recognizable as having only a few hours before been part of an aircraft. The runway was carpeted with the pieces of wreckage, mingled with the remnants of passengers' personal baggage. The pictures can show this horror. They can't convey the stench of the dead, of the smouldering still of the two aircraft, a stench which hung over the airport long after the last flames had died and the last bodies had been removed. Once this task had been completed, the workers seemed, not surprisingly, to hardly know what to do next. Most of the dead were still strapped in their seats as though ready for takeoff. One mother was still clutching her small daughter to her bosom. The witnesses could only talk of the horror of it all.
Well, my first thought was, wait, the fire engines would come out there. But then it got so bad where we were, and we knew they weren't coming, that we had to get off. And I knew that I wasn't going to stay in there and burn up.
And how does it feel to be a survivor in what is the world's largest air crash?
It feels great to be alive. I'd be lying if I said anything else.
Both planes burst instantly into flames at the moment of impact. Thousands of jagged fragments were thrown out and scattered over a 200-yard stretch of the runway. They're all burned and twisted, and they've left the runway surface pockmarked with dents and holes where the tarmac's melted. This is Tenerife's only runway, and it's going to stay completely unserviceable for some time. The collision happened on the ground, and so the wreckage, although strewn over a long stretch of the runway, is concentrated on the tarmac itself, and that accounts for the degree of damage to the surface. Investigators have already begun piecing together what happened. This time, their task is not the usual one of finding out what mechanical failure there might have been, but of trying to establish why two jumbo jets were on the same runway at the same time, both preparing for takeoff. Survivors from the Pan Am Jumbo had an escape nothing short of miraculous. All climbed out of the front of the fuselage, out of the cockpit and the first-class compartment. One survivor said, "The top of the plane was sheared right off. There was just a big open place. I crawled through the debris, jumped down the side of the plane and ran." Another said there was no panic after the crash. The main thing most of the survivors were trying to do was to get as far away as possible from the plane. An American, Mr. James Nake, one of the tour organizers of the Pan Am plane, said his greatest fear was for his wife. He said she couldn't take the buckles off her seatbelt and she was impossible to move. "I tried to pull her up," he said, "and then there was an explosion. I was thrown out of the plane. I looked and saw the whole plane on fire. Another explosion and my wife was thrown out. She's now in hospital seriously injured." Meanwhile, the airport stays closed and the investigation into exactly what happened is likely to be a long one.